The morning air is cold and damp. A thin fog hangs over the camp as the first soldiers begin to wake. Blankets are rolled up, boots are put on. Somewhere near the edge of the camp, a small fire begins to crackle. Before the marching begins, before the drills and gunfire, there is something every soldier is thinking about: food. The Civil War Soldiers' Day was full of uncertainty, laborious marching, and the smell of black gunpowder. Whether wearing Union blue or Confederate gray, the war was exhausting. This made food very important for both morale and fuel. Men had to eat. But what exactly did the Civil War soldiers eat? Who prepared the food? Did they ever enjoy sweets or desserts or special meals? And what did hungry soldiers carry in their pockets while marching into battle? To answer that, we have to step inside a typical army camp in the 1860s. The cooking fires were usually already burning by sunrise. Each company, usually made up of about 100 men, had several soldiers assigned to cooking duties. These men were often called company cooks. It wasn't always a glamorous job, but it was essential. Feeding an entire company meant waking early, hauling water, tending fires, and working with whatever rations the army had issued. Some soldiers were officially assigned to be cooks. Other times, the duty was rotated among the men. In larger camps, there were even professional cooks attached to officers' messes. Officers typically ate slightly better than the average soldier, but most enlisted men relied on simple rations, and they were very simple. The backbone of the Civil War soldiers' diet was something called hardtack. Hardtack was a small, square cracker made of flour, water, and sometimes salt. It was baked until it became extremely dry and hard, with very little water or moisture. So hard that the soldiers would joke around and said it'd break your teeth. Many nicknamed it sheet iron crackers. But despite its toughness, hardtack had one major advantage: it never spoiled. Soldiers often softened it by dipping it in coffee, or frying it in baked grease over fire, or dipping it in soup or water. Alongside hardtack, soldiers were issued salted meat. Most commonly, this was salted pork or beef. The meat had been heavily cured with salt, so it could survive long journeys without rotting. Before cooking it, soldiers often soaked the meat in water to remove some of the excess salt. Then it might be fried in a pan over open fire. The smell of sizzling pork drifting throughout the camp would wake everybody up and excited for the day. Coffee was another essential part of the Civil War soldier's life. Union soldiers in particular became famous for their love of coffee. The army issued roasted coffee beans as a part of their rations, and soldiers often carried small coffee grinders with them. If a soldier lost their grinder, they would simply smash the beans with the butt end of their rifle or use a rock. The grounds were then boiled in a tin cup over fire. It wasn't fancy coffee at all, oftentimes bitter and strong, and sometimes had bits of grounds floating in the cup, but it was hot and it kept the tired soldiers awake during the long marches, so it served its purpose. Confederate soldiers, on the other hand, had a harder time dealing with food and coffee. They didn't have the same access to coffee, and so they had substitutes, including roasted corn, chicory, or even burned sweet potatoes. The taste was far from perfect, but it was better than nothing. Now, despite the harsh conditions of war, soldiers did occasionally enjoy desserts. Sugar was issued in small quantities, and sometimes soldiers received molasses or dried fruit when supplies allowed it. Cooks might even prepare simple desserts like rice pudding. Another treat was called skilly-gally, a dish made by frying hardtack in pork fat, and they would sprinkle some sugar on it. It may not sound very luxurious, but the hungry soldiers welcomed it. compared to just having plain crackers. Some soldiers also carried small snacks in their haversacks when marching. These might include extra hardtack, crackers, dried apples, nuts, pieces of smoked meat. The haversack was a cloth bag that slung over their shoulder and was the soldier's portable pantry. During long marches or in the chaos of battle, they rarely had time to sit down and have a proper meal, so the soldiers would simply chew on hardtack or eat cold meat while walking or marching. Food could also become surprisingly creative in camp. When soldiers had access to nearby farms or markets, they would buy fresh food, eggs, potatoes, chicken, and even vegetables sometimes. And the skilled cooks could turn these ingredients into stews, soups, or skillet meals. Some companies even organized small cooking groups known as messes, where a handful of soldiers would pull together their rations and cook more elaborate meals. These mess groups became important social spaces in camp life. Men sat around fires, shared stories from home, and tried to forget the dangers waiting beyond camp. And on special occasions, the food would improve, like during Christmas or Thanksgiving, where they were able to get extra rations or donated food from civilians back home. This included turkey, pies, cakes, and other things. These meals were rare, but it was deeply meaningful. For a brief moment, surrounded by smoke tent at the tent area, soldiers could almost imagine being back at home. Food shortages were common, especially amongst the Confederate troops. As war continued and supply lines weakened, the Confederate soldiers sometimes went hungry. Meals became smaller, meat was scarce. Yet, despite all the hardships, soldiers adapted. They learned to cook over open fires, stretch simple rations very far, and share what little they had. Because of the life of a Civil War soldier, food was more than just fuel. Food was comfort, it was routine, it was one of the few small pieces of normal life in the world filled with uncertainty. So the next time you picture a Civil War battlefield, it's worth remembering what happened behind the scenes. The crackling fires, the smell of pork frying in the iron pans, the clatter of tin cups filled with hot coffee, and soldiers gathered in early morning light, quietly eating the same simple meals that helped carry them through one of the most difficult chapters in American history. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, see you in the next video.